The silence in the briefing room was deafening. 47 elite military personnel sat around the mahogany table, their chest ribbons telling stories of valor across 3 decades of warfare. At the head sat Admiral James Morrison, a man whose reputation preceded him into every room he entered. His weathered hands bore the calluses of a lifetime spent gripping weapons, and his eyes held the weight of decisions that had saved thousands of lives. But today, all eyes weren't on the Admiral. They were on the young woman sitting quietly in the corner, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her uniform bearing the simple markings of a Marine Corps sniper. Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez had been invited to this meeting, a gathering of America's most decorated special operations commanders, and nobody quite understood why. The whispers had started the moment she walked in.
"What's she doing here?" muttered a Delta Force colonel. "This is way above her pay grade," chuckled a Green Beret captain. Even her fellow Marines exchanged puzzled glances. After all, she was just a sniper. Talented, sure, but hardly the caliber of warrior that belonged in this room of legends.
What they didn't know was that, in less than an hour, everything they thought they knew about warfare, about heroism, and about the quiet young woman in the corner would be turned completely upside down. Because Elena Rodriguez wasn't there to take notes or observe. She was there because she had accomplished something that even these battle-hardened veterans thought was impossible. And when Admiral Morrison finally stood up and asked the question that would change military history forever, it would be Elena's hand that rose first, steady and sure, silencing the doubters, and proving that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes come in the most unexpected packages. This is her story.
Elena Rodriguez never imagined she would become a Marine, much less find herself in the crosshairs of military history. Growing up in a small farming town in Nebraska, she was the daughter of a mechanic and a schoolteacher, raised on values of hard work and quiet determination.
Her childhood was spent helping her father in his garage, learning to fix engines and handle tools with precision that would later serve her in ways she never expected. The town of Millfield had a population of barely 3,000 people, where everybody knew everybody else's business. Elena was known as the shy girl who preferred reading to parties, who could outshoot any of the boys at the county fair, and who had an uncanny ability to remain perfectly still for hours while hunting with her grandfather. These traits seemed unremarkable in rural Nebraska, but they would prove to be the foundation of an extraordinary military career. Her decision to join the Marines came after the September 11th attacks when she was just 18 years old. Unlike many of her classmates who were swept up in the patriotic fervor of the moment, Elena's choice was deeply personal and carefully considered. She had watched the towers fall on the television in her high school cafeteria, and something inside her shifted permanently. The senseless loss of life, the images of first responders rushing toward danger, the realization that freedom wasn't free, it all crystallized into a quiet but unshakable resolve. Her parents were initially resistant. Maria Rodriguez had hoped her daughter would follow her into teaching, while Roberto worried about his little girl in a world of combat and warfare. But they recognized the determination in Elena's eyes, the same steely resolve she had shown as a child when she set her mind to something. After months of discussion and preparation, they drove her to the Marine Corps recruiting station in Lincoln, Nebraska, on a crisp October morning in 2001. The recruiting station was buzzing with activity.
Young men and women from across the state were arriving daily, all with their own reasons for wanting to serve. Sergeant First Class Mike Thompson, a grizzled veteran with 20 years of service, had seen hundreds of potential recruits walk through his doors.
But there was something different about Elena Rodriguez. While others were loud and boastful about their intentions, she sat quietly, absorbing every word he spoke about Marine Corps values, training, and expectations. "Why do you want to be a Marine?" Thompson asked her during the initial interview. Elena's response was simple and direct. "Because someone needs to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. I want to be that someone." Thompson had heard similar responses countless times, but the way Elena said it, without drama or bravado, like she was stating a mathematical fact, made him take notice. He would later tell his colleagues that he knew from that first meeting that Elena Rodriguez was going to be special. The journey to Marine Corps Recruit Depot Paris Island was Elena's first time leaving Nebraska. The 13-week transformation from civilian to Marine was brutal for everyone, but Elena approached each challenge with the same quiet determination that had defined her childhood. While her fellow recruits struggled with the physical demands, Elena's years of farm work and hunting had prepared her body for the rigors of military training. But it was her mental toughness that truly set her apart.
During the Crucible exercise, the final test of recruit training, Elena's platoon was assigned a mission that required them to move through difficult terrain while carrying heavy equipment. When one of her fellow recruits, a young man from Chicago named Marcus Williams, collapsed from exhaustion and heat, Elena made a decision that would define her character as a Marine. Instead of leaving Williams behind or calling for help, she quietly redistributed his equipment among herself and 2 other recruits, then helped him to his feet. For the next 6 hours, she essentially carried Williams through the exercise while maintaining her own performance standards. When drill instructors later asked why she had risked her own success for another recruit, Elena's response was characteristic: Marines don't leave Marines behind. Upon graduation from Parris Island, Elena was assigned to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton in California for infantry training. This was where she first encountered the Marine Corps sniper program, though it wasn't initially by choice. During a routine marksmanship exercise, Elena's shooting scores caught the attention of Staff Sergeant David Liu, a scout sniper instructor who had been watching the new Marines qualify on the rifle range. Elena's groupings were unlike anything Liu had seen from a new Marine. While most recruits were happy to hit the target consistently, Elena was putting round after round through the same hole at distances that challenged even experienced Marines. Her breathing control was perfect, her trigger discipline was textbook, and her natural ability to read wind and adjust for environmental factors was remarkable. Rodriguez, Liu called out after the exercise. Have you ever considered sniper training? Elena had honestly never thought about it. In her mind, snipers were mysterious, elite warriors who operated in the shadows. Nothing like the straightforward infantry Marine she had planned to become. But Leo explained that the Marine Corps was looking for candidates who possessed not just shooting skills but the mental discipline and patience that sniper work required. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper program was among the most demanding in the military. Of the Marines who attempted the training, fewer than 30% successfully completed it. The course combined advanced marksmanship with fieldcraft, camouflage techniques, observation skills, and the mental toughness required to remain motionless for days while gathering intelligence or waiting for a shot. Elena's first challenge came during the stalking portion of training. Students were required to move undetected across open terrain, while instructors with binoculars and spotting scopes tried to locate them. Many students failed this phase repeatedly, unable to control their movement or properly camouflage themselves. Elena, drawing on childhood hours spent motionless in hunting blinds, seemed to disappear into the landscape itself. Instructor Sergeant Major Robert "Ghost" Patterson, a legend in the sniper community, was initially skeptical of the young woman in his course. In 2005 years of training snipers, he had never had a female student, and he wasn't sure she possessed the physical and mental toughness the job required. But Elena's performance forced him to reconsider his assumptions. During one training exercise, students were required to remain in position for 48 hours while observing a target area and reporting on activity. The weather was brutal. A late spring storm brought freezing rain and winds that made maintaining a steady shooting position nearly impossible. Several students requested extraction due to the conditions, but Elena remained in place for the entire exercise, providing detailed intelligence reports every hour as required. When Patterson finally located her position after the exercise concluded, he found Elena exactly where she had been placed 2 days earlier, her rifle still trained on the target area, her uniform soaked through but her focus unbroken. Her observation log was the most detailed and accurate of any student in the class. Rodriguez, Patterson said as she finally rose from her position, you might actually have what it takes for this job. The academic portions of sniper school challenged Elena in different ways. She studied ballistics, meteorology, range estimation, and target analysis, with the same methodical approach she brought to everything else. Her instructors noted that she asked few questions, but the questions she did ask revealed a deep understanding of the material and a desire to master every aspect of her craft. The psychological aspects of sniper training were perhaps the most difficult for Elena. Unlike the infantry, where Marines operated as part of a team, snipers often worked alone or in two-person teams, making life and death decisions with minimal supervision. The weight of that responsibility, the knowledge that her actions could determine the success or failure of entire operations, was something Elena had to come to terms with. During a classroom session on the ethics and legal aspects of sniper employment, Elena asked a question that revealed her character. How do you ensure that every shot you take is justified and necessary? The instructor, a veteran of multiple combat deployments, explained that snipers operate under strict rules of engagement and are held to the highest standards of accountability. But Elena's question went deeper than legal requirements. She wanted to understand how to maintain her moral compass in situations where split-second decisions could mean the difference between life and death.
As Elena progressed through sniper school, her reputation among instructors and fellow students grew. She wasn't the loudest or most aggressive student, but she was consistently excellent in every phase of training. Her shooting scores were the highest in her class, her field craft was nearly flawless, and her dedication to the mission was absolute. The final exercise of sniper school was a comprehensive test that combined all the skills students had learned.
Elena and her partner, Lance Corporal James Mitchell, were assigned a mission that required them to infiltrate a target area, gather intelligence for 72 hours, and then execute a simulated shot on a high-value target. The exercise area was 1,000 acres of rough terrain that included forests, open fields, and a mock village populated with role players. Elena and Mitchell had to move undetected through this area while dozens of opposing force personnel actively searched for them. Any student team that was discovered would fail the exercise immediately.
Elena took the lead in planning their route and establishing their observation position. Using topographical maps and aerial photographs, she identified a location that provided excellent visibility of the target area, while offering multiple escape routes if they were discovered. Her attention to detail extended to calculating wind patterns, sun angles, and even the timing of local wildlife activity that could compromise their position. For 3 days, Elena and Mitchell remained undetected while providing detailed intelligence reports on activity in the target area. On the final day of the exercise, they were given the execute order for their simulated shot. Elena's shot broke exactly when it was supposed to, at the precise moment the target was in the optimal position. The exercise controllers later said it was one of the most perfectly executed missions they had ever observed. Elena Rodriguez graduated from Marine Corps Scout Sniper School as the honor graduate of her class, the first woman ever to achieve that distinction. But rather than celebrating, Elena was already focused on the next challenge, preparing for deployment to a combat zone where her skills would be tested under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Her instructors knew they had trained someone special, but even they couldn't have predicted the extraordinary mission that awaited Elena Rodriguez in the mountains of Afghanistan, where her actions would change military history and earn the respect of the most elite warriors in the American military. The heat hit Elena Rodriguez like a physical wall as she stepped off the transport aircraft at Forward Operating Base Chapman in Afghanistan. The air was thick with dust and the constant hum of generators, helicopters, and the organized chaos of a military base at war. It was March 2003 and Elena was about to begin her first combat deployment as a newly qualified Marine Scout sniper. Elena had spent months preparing for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare a Marine for the reality of a combat zone. The base was a sprawling collection of temporary structures, defensive positions, and the controlled chaos that defined military operations in hostile territory. Marines, soldiers, sailors, and airmen from multiple nations worked together in an environment where the threat of attack was constant and real. Her new unit, Scout Sniper Platoon, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, was housed in a cluster of hardened tents near the base perimeter. The platoon consisted of 8 two-man sniper teams, led by Gunnery Sergeant Michael Torres, a veteran of multiple combat deployments who had earned his reputation as one of the Marine Corps' finest sniper leaders. Torres had requested Elena specifically for his platoon, after reviewing her training records and speaking with her instructors. Rodriguez, Torres said during her initial briefing, "You're here because you're good at what you do, but training and combat are 2 different animals. Stay alert, follow orders, and learn from every mission. Your job is to provide precise fire support for our infantry units and gather intelligence that keeps Marines alive." Elena's sniper partner was Corporal Alex Chen, a soft-spoken Marine from Seattle who had completed 2 previous deployments as an infantry Marine before volunteering for sniper training. Chen had graduated sniper school 6 months before Elena and had specifically requested to partner with her after observing her performance during advanced training exercises at Camp Pendleton. The partnership between a sniper and spotter is one of the most critical relationships in the military. The 2 Marines must work together seamlessly, trusting each other with their lives in situations where a single mistake can be fatal. Chen would serve as Elena's spotter, handling range estimation, wind calculation, target identification, and radio communications while Elena focused on precision shooting. Their first mission came just 5 days after Elena's arrival. Intelligence reports indicated that a group of Taliban fighters had established a position in the mountains overlooking a supply route used by coalition forces. The enemy fighters had been conducting ambushes on convoy traffic, and several Marines had been killed or wounded in recent attacks. Elena and Chen were tasked with locating the enemy position and providing overwatch for a patrol that would attempt to clear the area. Elena felt the familiar mix of nervousness and anticipation as she prepared her equipment for the mission. Her rifle, a modified M40A3 sniper system, had been zeroed and tested repeatedly during training, but this would be the first time she would potentially use it against an enemy
who was actively trying to kill American forces.
The weight of that responsibility was something she had trained for mentally, but experiencing it firsthand was different than any simulation or exercise. The helicopter insertion took place before dawn, with Elena and Chen inserted into a landing zone several kilometers from their intended observation position. They would have to move on foot through difficult mountain terrain while carrying their weapons, ammunition, communications equipment, water, and food for a 3-day mission. The total weight of their equipment exceeded 80 pounds per Marine. Elena had spent countless hours studying topographical maps of their area of operations, identifying potential routes, observation positions, and escape routes if their mission was compromised. But moving through the actual terrain was more challenging than any map could convey. The mountains were steep and rocky with loose shale that made every step potentially hazardous. The altitude affected their breathing, and the temperature swings from freezing nights to scorching days tested their endurance. After 6 hours of careful movement, Elena and Chen reached their planned observation position, a natural rock formation that provided excellent visibility of the suspected enemy area while offering concealment from observation. Elena immediately began the methodical process of establishing their position, creating shooting lanes and escape routes, while Chen set up their spotting scope and communications equipment. The valley below them stretched for miles, a seemingly peaceful landscape of scattered villages and agricultural areas that belied the deadly conflict being waged throughout the region. Elena began the patient work of observation, systematically scanning every potential hiding place where enemy fighters might establish positions. On their second day in position, Chen spotted movement in a compound approximately 800 meters away. Through their spotting scope, they could see several armed men moving between buildings, carrying weapons and equipment that clearly identified them as enemy fighters. Elena confirmed the observation through her rifle scope and began calculating range, wind conditions, and the optimal time to engage if ordered. Their radio crackled to life as the patrol they were supporting reported taking fire from the direction Elena and Chen were observing. The patrol leader requested immediate sniper support to suppress the enemy position. Elena felt her training take over as she settled into her shooting position, her breathing controlled and steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Range 820 meters, Chen reported quietly. Wind 2 to 3 miles per hour, left to right. Target is adult male with AK-47, moving between the 2 buildings on the left side of the compound. Elena acquired her target through her scope, a bearded man in traditional Afghan clothing who was clearly directing the other fighters in their attack on the Marine patrol. Her crosshairs settled on center mass as she controlled her breathing and began applying pressure to the trigger. Years of training had prepared her for this moment, but actually taking another human being's life was a psychological threshold she had never crossed. "Send it," Chen whispered, confirming that the target was legitimate and the shot was authorized under their rules of engagement. Elena's rifle bucked against her shoulder as the shot broke. Through her scope, she saw the target drop immediately, confirming a successful hit. The other enemy fighters immediately began seeking cover, their attack on the Marine patrol disrupted. Elena worked the bolt on her rifle and acquired a second target, another fighter who was attempting to reposition a machine gun. Her second shot was equally precise and the enemy position fell silent. The Marine patrol was able to advance and clear the compound without further casualties. Elena had successfully completed her first combat mission, providing the precise fire support that allowed her fellow Marines to accomplish their objectives safely. But Elena felt no sense of triumph or celebration. Taking human lives, even enemy fighters who were actively trying to kill American forces, weighed heavily on her conscience. She understood intellectually that her actions had saved Marine lives and disrupted enemy operations. But the emotional impact of combat was something she would have to process and learn to manage. Chen, recognizing Elena's emotional state, provided the support that sniper partners give each other in such moments. "You did your job perfectly," he told her quietly. "Those shots saved Marine lives. That's what matters." Over the following weeks, Elena and Chen conducted dozens of missions throughout their area of operations. They provided overwatch for patrol operations, gathered intelligence on enemy movements and activities, and engaged targets when authorized to do so. Elena's shooting skills proved to be exceptional even by sniper standards, with confirmed hits at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters under challenging conditions. But it was Elena's fieldcraft and tactical thinking that truly impressed her leaders. During one mission, she identified a pattern in enemy movements that revealed a previously unknown supply route being used by Taliban fighters. Her detailed observations and reporting led to a successful operation that disrupted enemy logistics throughout the region. Elena's reputation within the battalion began to grow as word of her capabilities spread among the infantry units she supported. Marines who had initially been skeptical of a female sniper quickly recognized her professionalism and effectiveness. During one patrol operation,
Elena's precise shooting eliminated 3 enemy fighters who had ambushed a Marine squad, allowing the Marines to evacuate wounded personnel and complete their mission. The psychological pressure of sniper operations in combat was intense.
Elena and Chen often spent days in isolated positions, responsible for making split-second decisions that could determine the outcome of entire operations. The knowledge that her fellow Marines were depending on her accuracy and judgment was a constant source of pressure that Elena learned to channel into focus and determination.
Elena's first deployment also exposed her to the broader complexities of the conflict in Afghanistan. She observed the daily struggles of Afghan civilians caught between coalition forces and Taliban fighters, witnessed the destruction and human cost of warfare, and began to understand the challenging nature of fighting an insurgency in a foreign country with different cultural values and traditions. During a mission near the Pakistani border, Elena and Chen observed a group of Taliban fighters using a village school as a weapons storage facility. The presence of civilians, including children, in the area made any direct action impossible under the rules of engagement.
Elena spent hours documenting the enemy activity, providing intelligence that allowed coalition forces to develop a plan to secure the weapons cache without endangering innocent lives. These experiences shaped Elena's understanding of her role as a Marine sniper.
She was not just a precision shooter, but an intelligence gatherer, a protector of innocent life, and a representative of American values in a complex and dangerous environment. The weight of these responsibilities drove her to constantly improve her skills and deepen her understanding of the tactical and strategic aspects of military operations.
As Elena's first deployment neared its end, she had established herself as one of the most capable snipers in the battalion. Her confirmed kills numbered in the dozens. Her intelligence reporting had contributed to numerous successful operations, and her professionalism had earned the respect of Marines throughout the unit. But Elena knew that her real test was yet to come. Unknown to Elena, her performance had been noted by senior leaders throughout the Marine Corps and other branches of the military.
Her combination of technical skills, tactical intelligence, and unwavering professionalism marked her as a Marine, with the potential for much greater responsibilities. When she returned from deployment, Elena would face new challenges and opportunities that would ultimately lead to the extraordinary mission that would define her career. The young woman who had grown up on a Nebraska farm had proven herself in combat as one of America's finest warriors. But her greatest test was still ahead. In the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, where she would be called upon to accomplish the impossible and earn her place among the most elite soldiers in the world.
2 years after her first deployment, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez found herself in a classified briefing room at Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan, facing a mission that defied conventional military wisdom. The year was 2005. And the war in Afghanistan had evolved into a complex counterinsurgency operation where traditional tactics often proved inadequate against a determined and adaptive enemy. The briefing room contained an unusual collection of military personnel. Alongside Elena and her spotter, now Staff Sergeant Chen, sat representatives from Army Special Forces, Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Operations, and CIA operatives. The mission they were about to discuss had been classified at the highest levels and carried implications that extended far beyond normal military operations. Colonel Sarah Hendricks, the mission commander, stood before a large topographical map showing the remote Kunar province near the Pakistani border.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a time-sensitive target that presents unique challenges. Intelligence indicates that Abu Rashid al-Masri, a high-value target responsible for coordinating attacks throughout this region, will be meeting with tribal leaders in this compound tomorrow at 1400 hours.
Elena studied the map, immediately recognizing the tactical challenges the mission presented. The target compound was located in a narrow valley surrounded by steep mountains, accessible only through a single road that was heavily monitored by enemy forces.
Traditional assault forces would be detected long before reaching the objective, and airstrikes were not feasible due to the presence of civilians in the area. Colonel Hendricks continued her briefing.
The compound is approximately 3 kilometers from the nearest position where our forces can establish overwatch. The target will be inside the building for approximately 30 minutes before departing through a different route.
We will have one opportunity to eliminate this target, and failure is not an option. Elena felt the familiar tightness in her stomach that accompanied difficult missions.
3 kilometers was an extremely long range for a sniper shot, even under ideal conditions. The environmental factors in the Afghan mountains, altitude, temperature variations, and unpredictable wind patterns, made such a shot exponentially more difficult.
But Elena had spent 2 years honing her skills in combat, and her reputation for precision under pressure had brought her to this briefing room.
The CIA representative, a woman identified only as Agent Martinez, provided additional intelligence. Al-Masri has survived 3 previous attempts to capture or eliminate him.
He never stays in one location for more than 30 minutes and travels with extensive security. This meeting represents the best intelligence we've had on his location in 18 months. The information came from a source who risked his life to provide it. Elena raised her hand. No. Ma'am, has anyone attempted a shot at this range in these conditions? Colonel Hendricks exchanged glances with the other officers before responding. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the Marine Corps chose you for this mission because our analysis indicates you are the only sniper currently deployed who has the combination of technical skill and combat experience necessary to make this shot. The longest confirmed sniper kill in military history was just over 2 kilometers. What we're asking you to attempt has never been done. The weight of that statement settled over Elena like a heavy blanket. She was being asked to attempt something that no sniper in history had successfully accomplished, under conditions that would challenge even the most advanced technology.
The implications of success or failure extended far beyond her personal reputation. Intelligence indicated that al-Masri was planning a large-scale attack that could kill hundreds of coalition forces and Afghan civilians. Elena's mind immediately began working through the calculations required for such a shot. At 3 kilometers, her bullet would be in flight for approximately 4 seconds. During that time, environmental factors would affect the projectile's trajectory in ways that required precise calculation and a significant amount of luck. Wind conditions could change multiple times during the bullet's flight, and the target would have to remain stationary long enough for the shot to reach him.
What support will be available for the mission? Elena asked. Major Tom Bradley from Air Force Special Operations answered. We'll have a combat weather team providing real-time atmospheric data, and a forward observer with laser range-finding equipment will be positioned as close to the target area as possible.
But ultimately, this comes down to your ability to read conditions and make the shot. Elena looked at Chen, who would be her spotter for the mission. They had worked together for over 2 years, developing the kind of trust and communication that was essential for sniper operations. Chen nodded slightly, indicating his confidence in their ability to attempt the mission.
We'll need time to study the terrain and weather patterns, Elena said. And I'll want to test my rifle at extended ranges to verify ballistic data. Colonel Hendricks approved Elena's requests, and over the next 18 hours, Elena and Chen conducted the most intensive mission preparation of their careers.
They studied satellite imagery of the target area, analyzed historical weather data, and worked with ordnance specialists to select the optimal ammunition for the shot. Elena spent hours on the rifle range, testing her weapon system at progressively longer distances and recording precise ballistic data for each shot.
The bullet Elena would use was a specially manufactured round designed for extreme long-range accuracy. The projectile weighed 750 grains and was capable of maintaining supersonic velocity at ranges exceeding 3 kilometers.
Elena worked with the ordnance team to hand-select individual cartridges that met the most stringent accuracy standards. Elena's rifle required modifications for the mission.
The specialized scope with variable magnification up to 50 power was mounted and carefully zeroed. The rifle's bipod was replaced with a custom rest system that provided maximum stability. And Elena practiced shooting positions that would allow her to maintain accuracy during the extended time required for the shot. The psychological preparation was as important as the technical aspects.
Elena knew that she would have one opportunity to make a shot that could affect the course of the war in Afghanistan. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced in combat, where targets typically presented themselves at more reasonable ranges under less critical circumstances. Chen worked with the intelligence team to develop a detailed timeline of the target's expected activities. Al-Masri was known to be punctual and methodical in his movements, providing a narrow window of opportunity when he would be stationary and vulnerable.
The intelligence also indicated that he wore distinctive clothing that would help Elena identify him among the other individuals who would be present. On the morning of the mission, Elena and Chen were inserted by helicopter into a landing zone 15 kilometers from their intended shooting position. They would have to move on foot through some of the most challenging terrain in Afghanistan, carrying equipment that weighed over 100 pounds per Marine. The route took them through river valleys, across ridge lines, and finally to a rocky outcropping that provided the only feasible shooting position within range of the target. The Deathy sister is fighting is past. The movement to their position took 6 hours of careful navigation through enemy-controlled territory. Elena and Chen moved silently, avoiding known enemy positions and utilizing natural concealment to remain undetected.
The physical demands of carrying their equipment at high altitude tested their endurance, But Elena's farm-strengthened body and years of military conditioning prepared her for the challenge.
Their shooting position was a natural rock formation that provided a stable platform for Elena's rifle while offering concealment from observation. Chen immediately began setting up their spotting equipment while Elena prepared her rifle and established her shooting position.
The target compound was visible through their optics, appearing impossibly small at the extreme range. Elena began the methodical process of gathering environmental data for her shot.
Wide conditions at their position were measured using precision instruments, but Elena also had to estimate wind patterns between their location and the target based on visual indicators like dust patterns and vegetation movement. Temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure all affected bullet trajectory and had to be factored into her calculations. The ballistic calculations required for the shot were beyond anything Elena had attempted in combat. Her bullet would drop approximately 60 feet during its flight, requiring significant elevation adjustment to her scope. Wind deflection could move the bullet several feet off course, and Elena had to predict conditions that might change during the 4-second flight time. At 13:30 hours, 30 minutes before the target's expected arrival, Elena and Chen were in position and ready. Elena's rifle was loaded with a single carefully selected cartridge, and her scope was adjusted based on the latest environmental readings. Chen was monitoring radio communications and providing updates on the target's movement toward the compound. Target convoy observed moving toward objective, Chen reported quietly. 3 vehicles consisted with intelligence estimates. Elena settled into her shooting position, controlling her breathing and heart rate to minimize movement that could affect her accuracy.
Years of training had taught her to enter an almost meditative state where external distractions faded away and her entire focus centered on the shot. She could hear her own heartbeat and feel the rhythm of her breathing as she prepared for what would either be the longest confirmed sniper kill in military history or a mission failure with far-reaching consequences.
At 13:58 hours, Chen confirmed the arrival of al-Masri's convoy at the target compound. Through their spotting scope, they could see armed guards taking positions around the building, while several individuals in traditional Afghan dress entered the structure. Elena's scope was trained on the entrance, waiting for her target to appear. Positive identification of target, Chen whispered. Adult male, approximately 6 feet tall, wearing white robes with black vest, moving toward the building entrance. Elena acquired the target through her scope, her crosshairs settling on a man who matched the intelligence description perfectly. At 3 kilometers, the figure appeared tiny in her scope, barely larger than the intersection of her crosshairs. Elena began her final breathing cycle, preparing to take a shot that would test the absolute limits of human capability and precision equipment. The moment had arrived for Elena Rodriguez to attempt the impossible. Elena Rodriguez existed in a bubble of absolute concentration as her fingers settled on the trigger. 3 kilometers away, Abu Rashid al-Masri stood in the doorway of the compound, completely unaware that the most challenging shot in military history was about to be attempted. Elena's breathing was controlled and rhythmic, her heart rate steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt.
Wind holding steady at 2 miles per hour left to right, Chen reported quietly through their communication headset. Target is stationary in the doorway.
You have a clear shot. Elena made final adjustments to her scope based on Chen's wind reading and her own observations of environmental conditions. At this extreme range, even the slightest error in calculation would result in a complete miss. The bullet would travel for approximately 4 seconds, during which time wind conditions could change, the target could move, or any number of variables could affect the shot's outcome. Elena's crosshairs settled on the center of al-Masri's torso. At 3 kilometers, the human figure was barely visible through her scope, requiring her to estimate the precise aiming point based on intelligence photos and her observation of the target's movement patterns. Elena had practiced this shot hundreds of times in simulation, but the reality of attempting it in combat conditions was unlike anything she had experienced. Send it, Chen whispered, confirming that conditions were optimal and the shot was authorized. Elena exhaled halfway and held her breath as she applied steady pressure to the trigger. Years of training had developed her trigger control to an art form, with the shot breaking at exactly the right moment without disturbing her rifle's alignment. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar authority, and Elena immediately worked the bolt to chamber another round while tracking the bullet's path through her scope. For 4 endless seconds, Elena watched through her scope as the bullet traveled its impossible trajectory across the Afghan valley. She could see dust and debris in the target area. But at this extreme range, confirming a hit would require Chen's spotting scope and radio confirmation from the forward observer positioned closer to the compound. Chen was tracking the bullet's impact through his spotting scope when he saw the unmistakable dust signature of a high-velocity impact in the target area. Good shot, he reported excitedly. I see impact in the target area. But visual confirmation of impact was not the same as confirming the target was hit. Elena maintained her shooting position, ready to take a follow-up shot if necessary, while Chen attempted to determine the shot's effectiveness through his spotting scope. At 3 kilometers, visual confirmation of a successful hit was extremely difficult even with the most advanced optics. The radio crackled as the forward observer, positioned 2 kilometers closer to the target, reported his observations. Overwatch, this is Eagle Eye. I observe 1 individual down in the target area. Repeat, 1 individual down. Other personnel are seeking cover and appear to be providing medical assistance.
Elena felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with the sobering realization that she may have just accomplished something unprecedented in military history. But confirmation would require intelligence from sources closer to the target, and Elena knew that claiming success prematurely could compromise future operations if the target had survived.
Within minutes of Elena's shot, the compound erupted in activity. Armed guards began searching the surrounding area for the source of the shot, while others attended to the fallen individuals. Elena and Chen could observe the chaos through their optics, but they maintained their position and prepared to egress according to their mission plan. Overwatch, this is command, came the voice of Colonel Hendricks over their radio. Begin immediate exfiltration to your pickup zone. We have intelligence assets moving to confirm target status. Outstanding work. Elena and Chen began the careful process of packing their equipment and preparing to move from their shooting position. The shot had revealed their general location to enemy forces, and they could see armed individuals beginning to move in their direction from the valley below. Their exfiltration route had been carefully planned to avoid known enemy positions, but Elena knew that their safety depended on moving quickly and remaining undetected. The movement to their pickup zone took 3 hours of careful navigation through increasingly hostile territory. Elena carried her rifle broken down into components to facilitate movement, while Chen monitored radio communications and watched for signs of pursuit. Several times they had to alter their route to avoid enemy patrols that were actively searching for them. Elena's mind was focused on movement and survival, but part of her consciousness was processing what had just occurred. She had attempted a shot that military experts considered impossible under combat conditions, and early indications suggested she had been successful. The technical aspects of the shot, the calculations, environmental reading, and equipment performance had all functioned perfectly, but Elena knew that luck had also played a role in the outcome. Their extraction helicopter arrived at the designated pickup zone precisely on schedule, and Elena and Chen were safely aboard within minutes of reaching the landing area. As the aircraft lifted off and flew toward their base, Elena finally allowed herself to consider the implications of what she had accomplished. During the flight back to Bagram, Elena's radio crackled with updates from intelligence sources monitoring the target area. CIA assets in the region were reporting unusual activity around the compound, including the arrival of additional security personnel and what appeared to be a medical evacuation, but positive confirmation of al-Masri's death would require human intelligence that could take days or weeks to develop. Upon their return to base, Elena and Chen were immediately debriefed by Colonel Hendricks and a team of intelligence specialists. Elena provided detailed information about shot conditions, her observations of the target area, and her assessment of the shot's effectiveness. The technical data from her rifle scope and Chen's spotting equipment was downloaded and analyzed by ballistics experts who were amazed by the precision achieved at such extreme range. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Colonel Hendricks said during the debrief, "Preliminary analysis indicates that your shot was successful. We're waiting for final confirmation, but early intelligence suggests that al-Masri was killed instantly. If confirmed, he will have achieved the longest successful sniper engagement in military history." Elena felt a complex mix of emotions upon hearing this news. Pride in accomplishing an extraordinary feat of marksmanship mixed with the sobering knowledge that she had taken a human life regardless of how justified the action had been. Elena had learned during her combat deployments that the psychological impact of her actions required careful processing and professional support. Over the following days, intelligence reports from multiple sources confirmed that Abu Rashid al-Masri had indeed been killed by Elena's shot. The terrorist leader's death disrupted a planned attack on coalition forces and eliminated one of the most dangerous enemy commanders in the region. Elena's successful engagement had saved potentially hundreds of lives and dealt a significant blow to enemy operations throughout eastern Afghanistan. News of Elena's achievement spread rapidly through military command structures, reaching the highest levels of the Pentagon and White House. Military historians and ballistics experts were astounded by the technical achievement, while operational commanders recognized the tactical significance of successfully eliminating a high-value target under such challenging conditions.
Elena's commanding officers recommended her for the Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor that could be awarded to a Marine. The citation would recognize not only her marksmanship skills but also her courage, dedication, and the extraordinary nature of her achievement under combat conditions.
But Elena's greatest satisfaction came from letters she received from Marines who had been scheduled to participate in operations that al-Masri had been planning. These Marines would return home safely to their families because Elena had successfully completed an impossible mission under conditions that tested the absolute limits of human capability and military technology.
The shot that Elena Rodriguez fired in the mountains of Afghanistan represented more than just a remarkable feat of marksmanship. It demonstrated the evolution of military capabilities, the importance of precision over brute force, and the extraordinary potential that could be achieved when advanced technology was combined with exceptional human skill and determination. Elena's achievement also challenged traditional assumptions about gender roles in combat operations. Her success proved that the most critical qualifications for elite military positions were skill, dedication, and mental toughness, rather than physical characteristics that had historically excluded women from certain roles. As news of Elena's achievements spread throughout the military community, she began receiving recognition from unexpected sources. Special operations units from all branches of the military requested her expertise for training and consultation. Elena was invited to speak at military academies and professional development courses, sharing her knowledge and experience with the next generation of military leaders.
Perhaps the most significant recognition came from Admiral James Morrison, the Navy SEAL commander who had been following Elena's career since her first deployment. Admiral Morrison was known throughout the military for his demanding standards and his ability to identify exceptional talent regardless of service branch or background.
Elena would soon learn that Admiral Morrison had been watching her progress with great interest, and that her successful mission in Afghanistan had brought her to the attention of the most elite military units in the American Armed Forces. The quiet Marine from Nebraska was about to face an opportunity that would test her skills and character in ways she had never imagined.
The impossible shot had been just the beginning of Elena Rodriguez's extraordinary military career. 6 months after her record-breaking shot in Afghanistan, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez received orders that puzzled everyone in her chain of command. She was to report to a classified facility in Virginia for a briefing with senior military leadership. The orders provided no details about the purpose of the meeting, only that her presence was required and that she should bring her complete service record and performance evaluations.
Elena's commanding officer, Colonel Martinez, was as confused as anyone about the unusual orders.
Rodriguez, in 25 years of service, I've never seen orders like these. Someone very high up wants to meet you, but I have no idea why or what this is about. Just remember that you represent not only yourself but the entire Marine Corps.
The flight from Afghanistan to Virginia gave Elena time to consider what might await her. Her record-setting shot had received significant attention within military circles, but she couldn't imagine why senior leadership would require her presence for a simple recognition ceremony or briefing.
The classified nature of the meeting suggested something far more significant than routine administrative matters. Upon arrival at the Virginia facility, Elena was surprised to find herself in a secure conference room with nearly 50 of the most senior military officers she had ever seen. The assembled group included generals and admirals from every branch of the military, senior CIA officials, and individuals in civilian clothes who were clearly important, but whose roles she couldn't identify. Elena felt distinctly out of place among such distinguished company.
Her staff sergeant rank seemed insignificant compared to the stars and ribbons worn by the officers around her. She wondered if there had been some mistake in her orders. But a Navy commander who greeted her confirmed that she was exactly where she was supposed to be.
Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the commander said, please take a seat at the conference table. Admiral Morrison will begin the briefing shortly. Elena recognized the name immediately.
Admiral James Morrison was a legendary figure in the special operations community, known for his leadership of some of the most classified and dangerous missions in recent military history. Navy SEALs spoke of him with a reverence typically reserved for mythical figures, and his reputation extended throughout all branches of the military.
Admiral Morrison entered the room with the bearing of a man accustomed to command in the most demanding circumstances. He was smaller in stature than Elena had expected, but his presence immediately commanded the attention of everyone present. His uniform bore the decorations of a career spent in the most elite units of the American military. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Morrison began, we're here today to discuss a mission that represents the evolution of special operations in the modern era.
The changing nature of warfare requires us to adapt our tactics, our training, and most importantly, our thinking about what constitutes elite military capability. Elena listened intently as Admiral Morrison outlined the strategic challenges facing American forces in multiple theaters around the world.
Terrorist networks were becoming more sophisticated, nation-state adversaries were developing advanced capabilities, and traditional military approaches were proving insufficient for the complex security environment of the 21st century. The mission I'm about to describe, Admiral Morrison continued, requires capabilities that extend beyond any single service or unit.
We need individuals who can operate independently in the most challenging environments, make split-second decisions with strategic implications, and accomplish objectives that conventional forces cannot achieve.
Elena began to understand why she had been summoned to this briefing.
Her record-setting shot in Afghanistan had demonstrated exactly the kind of capabilities Admiral Morrison was describing. Precision, independent judgment, and the ability to accomplish what others considered impossible. Admiral Morrison turned his attention to a large screen displaying satellite imagery of a remote location that Elena didn't recognize.
Intelligence indicates that a network of international terrorists has established a training facility in this location. The facility is beyond the reach of conventional military operations, but the threat it represents to American interests requires immediate action.
The satellite images showed a complex of buildings nestled in mountainous terrain that appeared even more challenging than the Afghanistan location where Elena had made her record shot. The facility was clearly well defended, with multiple security layers and positions that would make any conventional assault extremely difficult and costly. This mission, Admiral Morrison explained, requires a sniper capable of operating independently at extreme range under conditions that exceed anything previously attempted. The target must be eliminated with a single shot from a distance of approximately 4 kilometers, in an environment where failure would compromise not only the mission, but potentially expose American operations throughout the region.
Elena felt her pulse quicken as she realized the implications of what Admiral Morrison was describing. 4 kilometers was nearly a full kilometer beyond her record shot in Afghanistan, a distance that pushed the absolute limits of current technology and human capability. The environmental challenges would be exponentially greater, and the margin for error would be virtually non-existent. Admiral Morrison continued his briefing with technical details that made the mission's difficulty clear to everyone present.
Weather conditions in the target area included high winds, temperature extremes, and atmospheric conditions that would affect bullet trajectory in unpredictable ways. The shooting position would have to be established at high altitude, requiring extraordinary physical conditioning and the ability to perform under reduced oxygen conditions.
The individual selected for this mission, Admiral Morrison said, will be operating alone, without the support systems typically available to special operations forces. Success depends entirely on personal skill, judgment, and the mental toughness required to perform under the most demanding conditions imaginable.
Elena understood that Admiral Morrison was describing a mission that went far beyond conventional military operations. This was the kind of impossible task that existed in the realm of military legend, the type of mission that would either result in extraordinary success or complete failure with no middle ground.
Admiral Morrison turned to face the assembled officers and officials. The question before us today is simple. Do we have an individual capable of accomplishing this mission?
Someone willing to attempt what has never been done, under conditions that will test the absolute limits of human capability? The room fell silent as Admiral Morrison's question hung in the air. Elena could feel the attention of nearly 50 senior military leaders focused on the group, waiting for someone to volunteer for what appeared to be an impossible mission.
The silence stretched for long seconds as the implications of the mission settled over the assembled personnel. Elena's mind raced through the technical challenges such a mission would present.
4 kilometers was a distance that would require perfect conditions, flawless equipment performance, and extraordinary luck to achieve success. The bullet would be in flight for over 5 seconds, during which time any number of variables could affect its trajectory. Wind patterns at such extreme range would be nearly impossible to predict accurately, and the target would have to remain stationary for an extended period. But Elena also understood the strategic importance of the mission Admiral Morrison had described. The terrorist training facility represented a threat to American forces and innocent civilians around the world. If such a facility could be disrupted through precise action rather than massive military operations, the benefits would extend far beyond the immediate tactical success. Elena thought about her journey from a small farming town in Nebraska to this conference room filled with the most senior military leaders in America. Every challenge she had faced, every hour of training and preparation, every mission in combat had been preparing her for this moment. The impossible shot in Afghanistan had been a test, but this mission represented something far greater.
Admiral Morrison's question echoed in Elena's mind. Did they have someone capable of accomplishing the impossible? Elena knew that several other snipers in the room possessed exceptional skills and combat experience.
Any of them could potentially attempt such a mission, though none had demonstrated success at the extreme ranges this operation would require.
Elena raised her hand.
The room remained silent as Admiral Morrison's eyes fixed on her. Elena could feel the attention of every person present focused on her as she prepared to volunteer for a mission that would either establish her as the most accomplished sniper in military history or result in failure that could compromise American operations worldwide.
Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Admiral Morrison said quietly, "Are you volunteering for this mission?"
Elena stood, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to commit to.
"Yes, sir."
I believe this mission is achievable with proper preparation and support. I volunteer to attempt it. Admiral Morrison nodded slowly, his expression revealing nothing about his thoughts regarding Elena's volunteer. But Elena noticed something in his eyes. A recognition, perhaps even approval, that suggested he had been hoping for exactly this response.
Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Admiral Morrison said formally, "You have volunteered for what may be the most challenging sniper mission in military history. Are you fully aware of the risks and the probability of success?" Elena had spent her military career preparing for exactly this kind of moment, a time when everything she had learned and accomplished would be tested under the most demanding conditions imaginable.
Yes, sir. I understand the challenges and the risks, but I also understand the importance of the mission and the capabilities that successful completion would demonstrate. Admiral Morrison turned to address the entire room.
Ladies and gentlemen, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez has volunteered for Operation Distant Thunder. This mission will test not only her individual capabilities, but also our ability to support the most demanding special operations requirements of the modern era.
Elena felt a mixture of anticipation and responsibility settle over her as she realized what she had just committed to. The mission Admiral Morrison had described would require months of preparation, specialized equipment, and support from the most advanced technical resources available to the American military.
But Elena also felt a quiet confidence that had sustained her through every challenge of her military career. She had been told that her record shot in Afghanistan was impossible, yet she had succeeded through careful preparation, advanced training, and the mental toughness that had defined her character since childhood.
Elena Rodriguez, the quiet girl from Nebraska who had once been dismissed as just a sniper, was about to attempt a mission that would challenge every assumption about the limits of human capability and precision marksmanship. The Marines who had laughed and called her just a sniper would soon learn that they had witnessed the emergence of one of the most extraordinary warriors in American military history.
Admiral Morrison's question had been answered, and Elena Rodriguez was ready to prove that the impossible was simply another challenge waiting to be overcome.
Marines laughed and called her just a sniper. Then the SEAL Admiral raised his hand.